Alright, what's up guys, it's Zura here, and today we have for you, finally, after a month of no new set, so no change in the meta, we finally have a new tier list. So this is the set 1 of G, so set 1 of G brought us 3.5 new decks. I say half decks, Blade Master is hardly a deck, but 3.5 new decks being Altmile, Kira Chronicle as a clan, and an Overlord, or a Kagero, mainly Overlord, but also Blade Master. And I guess there's also the clan event deck, the Nova Grappler, the Victor. As of recording, the event literally just ended today, so just a bit of testing on that. I played a bit of it myself. I have a few friends who also played it, so I have an okay impression on that, so that is why it is also on the list, unlike usual. And since decks on the list, that can't be that bad, right? So yeah. So that's pretty good. The tier is tier 1, tier 2, and this time instead of having a tier 3 where I just have throwaway clans for the new sets, it's just everything else, because I do think this needs to be a tier for this sense specifically, because I think the meta is very small. There's a very small group of playable decks right now. So yeah. So that's pretty cool. I'll just go through the list. So I'll just fill in everything else here for now, just because it'll be a lot faster that way. I don't want to take too much time on that. So I'll just fill in the slots as I see them. This that's there. Seekers go there, and I do actually think Blade Master belongs here as well. He can go in the front of there, and this can go there, and Altmile can also go here. So all the old decks are old decks. They're good for the same reason. I'll just briefly go over all the older decks, and then I'll talk about the 3 new decks just because these decks are new and why I think they're here instead of being up here. So yeah, Sook is Sook. Sook has been here forever. Just leave it at the bottom. Just leave it here. It's always playable to some degree, right? So yeah. Seekers got a nice buff. I'm just going to say everything past these 3 are not ordered. Just I'm too lazy to order them. I think order of these 3 decks or something like this. So yeah. Seekers got a buff with the G Zone because Royals did get support. So therefore, Seekers can steal the G Zone. The Altmile use this, meaning you steal Blade, Saint Blow, and Samuel. Okay, buff to the deck, but overall, Seekers still Seekers, kind of whatever, to be honest. So yeah. The leaders are no longer anywhere near up here just because Stride exists as a mechanic, and every deck got access to create elemental strides, meaning every deck can stride. And because of that, the mechanic of delete just gets invalidated because they do not have to pay the tax of having to re-ride. They can just discard a card to stride instead. Yes, the new decks all lose their stride bonus effects, but they still basically ignore their entire mechanic, and their Vanguard is still hitting for big power, and then you still delete them again, and it basically doesn't do anything. So yeah, that's why the leaders have taken a huge fall from the tier list from the previous month. And this was to be expected, to be honest, because yeah, Stride just kind of dicks on their entire mechanic here. Next up, Starvaders. Starvaders are okay, I guess. They're okay. They're okay. And they lock stuff, but it's still super expensive cost and everything, and yeah, it just isn't that good. Although to be fair, the current decks right now are most of them are not playing on lockers and all that stuff, so they probably are actually not that bad just to play. But you will definitely get outgrinded by the old decks that did really well against you, being Revengers, Brawlers, and Fish, and Overlord will just outgrind you. They probably do pretty okay against Gears, but Gears do have the Ishin, the Resist Intercept, so I don't even know about that. So yeah, definitely belongs here, but yeah, still an okay deck, I guess. Perditions take a huge fall as well. This is more so just because Overlord the Cross, this deck is just better than Perditions in almost every way. Why would you play Perditions when you just play Overlord? So yeah, similar reason for Blade Master. Why are you playing Blade Master when you can just play Overlord instead? The deck itself is still fine, but the deck wasn't really that good to begin with, in my opinion. So the fact that there's just a straight up better Kagero deck than it right now just kind of gives you no reason to play Perditions. So yeah, but they do have the ability to steal the G Zone from Kagero, because they are Kagero, right? So they can play stuff like Mustafa and Root Flare in their deck. So it definitely got better. But still, I don't think it's that good just because Overlord the Cross exists, and there's no reason to play that over Perdition. Next up, Witches. As you can see, Regalia got tossed off the list. I don't think that deck's very good. So yeah, Witches. I still haven't got a chance to play them. I don't play against them very often either. but the deck is pretty okay. Got all these decks got access to heal guards if they want to play them. And yeah, it's just an okay deck. It's multi-attack and stuff. It's fine for what it is. Not the best, not the worst. Still very playable, I guess. Same thing with golds. Gold also are in the same boat. Still just like an okay playable deck. Not amazing, not terrible. Got access to heal guards. Whether you play them or not is still up in the air because Zenith on Seal is still pretty good for the deck. But yeah, it's still the golds are still golds. They do the same thing. Not a whole lot of things changed about them. And yeah, still a playable deck. So yeah, so. I list this tier with everything else, but these decks are perfectly playable, and you could probably still climb ladder to some degree with them. How high you can climb with them, that is up to you and your sanity if you want to play these not so good decks into actual good decks. So yeah. And finally, we have the 3 new decks. We have Blade Master. So Blade Master, I think, is by far the worst deck out of the set. Without question, is the worst deck out of the set. I think the reason I think Blade Master is so bad is because it is very dependent on your opponent committing to do anything. Ignoring the fact that Overlord exists, right? We'll just look at Blade Master as a deck. Like, obviously, if we're just gonna compare everything to Overlord, everything else, everything would be in this tier. But the thing with Blade Master is that it is very reliant on your opponent to commit a board to make plays, because the deck is all about retiring. If your opponent does not commit anything for you to retire, then the deck is playing a very vanilla game where they like toss a card, they stride, and they hit you face, and that's pretty much all they do. The biggest issue that it's reliant on your opponent committing a board for you to do anything, and if they don't commit, you're playing a very vanilla-esque game. So yeah, that's my biggest issue with Blade Master. It's not like a terrible deck per se, it's definitely playable, but it definitely has its issues. Alt Mile, I honestly don't know. Like, I've played the deck myself, I more or less have the entire deck. Play again. It's like somewhat frequent on ladder, but like some games you just steamroll your opponent, and then the other games you're just like, damn, why am I playing this garbage deck? The deck has the tools to do things, but I think the biggest issue with the deck is that once you bring your opponent to 5, which isn't hard, but it still can be challenging considering heals they'll fly around everywhere. But once you bring them to 5, your deck, all your strides become vanillas, right? Because Samuel is a ping, and you cannot ping your opponent when they're at 5. Good Blade is on hit. Saint Blow gets a crit, but a crit doesn't mean shit if they have a PG in their hand. And so the deck becomes very aligned on like Blaster Blade Spear if you're playing that, regular Blaster Blade if you're playing that, Knight of Twin Sword, which you will be playing in the deck, to endgame 3 points at 5, and those just not very threatening sometimes. You know, you're doing like 2 checks when every other deck is doing like 3+ checks on you when you're at 5. So yeah. It's definitely okay. It definitely has like a really good like early mid game, but then once you push your opponent to 5, you do struggle to end the game sometimes. So yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with Alt Mile. Once they're at 5, you just can't end the game. And Alt Mile itself just isn't that good, and your strides are like okay at best. But this is the first set of stride support, so not surprising the strides aren't like super omega busted or anything. But yeah, the deck is definitely like very okay, and if there definitely are arguments to bump it up a bit, I just don't see it. And the deck there are like multiple ways to play the deck. Currently myself, I'm on like a Jewel Knight variant of the deck where I'm playing like Evade and Sword Me, which I think is pretty nice. But regardless, I think all the versions of the deck still suffer from the same issue of struggling with end games at 5. So yeah. And finally, Victor. So Victor is a deck that the deck can like shit out damage a lot, but again, it's Novas, so they are borderlined, and the meta right now does have a lot of ward removal. So your boosters just constantly get bot decked by gears, get killed by like Overlord and stuff. It gets punched by brawls, all that good stuff. So there can be some issues there, and the deck really suffers from going first. The deck honestly just eats shit going first, but like has a really strong, is really powerful when you get to go second. So it is, as I like to call it, high roll garbage. The deck, when you get to go off, is very powerful, but when you don't get to go off, it's very bad. And not to mention, you have like an extra layer of low roll of going first. Obviously, yes, no deck wants to go first in this game. Like every deck in the game wants to go second because of first try, first legion, whatever. But Victor in specific really wants to go second, and you really notice the difference when you play the deck and play against the deck when they get to go first or when they get to go second. So I think that's my biggest issue with the deck. the deck itself is already high rolly to a degree, and then also you add an extra layer of super winning when you go second, but super losing when you go first. So yeah, obviously you can still win games going first, but you do notice the difference between it. So yeah, so that wraps it up for the everything else tier. Onwards to tier 2. I honestly might want to put Revengers here as well, but every time I play against the deck, the deck is still mad annoying. I've played the deck like a bit, and it's still mad annoying. So I think it deserves to be like the tail end of here, followed by Fish, Gear Chronicle, and Brawlers. So yeah, so we'll go from the back end. So as you can clearly see, there's only one deck left, right? So obviously Overlord goes here by itself. But we will get there after we go through these decks. So Revengers are still the same old deck. They go Mordred, they go Venom Blaster Abyss, their Vanguard Restand, they call a bunch of Blasters, retire your stuff, they have domains to draw them cards, Makar's to call back row, Judge Bow can call Sword Breakers and Dorans and stuff. And still does the same thing. The deck got, what the deck did get is that the deck does benefit a lot from strides, because although you're striding into a vanilla, right, you do get to toss out like the excess Mordreds in your hand that you don't really need to cycle for hopefully better cards. And so when you're 7 breaker anyways, you're playing vanilla anyways, so having the extra power to make sure your Vanguard hits as well as getting the triple drive is very nice to the deck. So a nice improvement, and you get to play Heal Guards as well. Problem is they are not Revenger names, so you can't stack them up for cost, but Heal Guards are still Heal Guards, and Heal Guards are still extra shields in your hand, and the deck definitely appreciates because the deck draws a lot, so even if you draw all your Heal Guards, all your heals in the deck, they are still shields in your hand now. So definitely still a very like playable deck, and the addition of even vanilla strides and heal guards are definitely very helpful for the deck. So yeah, that's still definitely a really good deck. So next up, followed by duos. So duos also have got the same buff as Revengers. Obviously, every deck did heal guards and vanilla strides. The villain strides help you sandbag, I guess, when you go second or when you go first, and you just can't drop someone up for Legion fast enough, so you can toss a card to play sandbag for a turn and then Legion afterwards. Heal guards lets you live longer, but I will say that because heal guards exist for every deck now, Fish, it's a double-edged sword for Fish, because for Fish, yes, they get to live longer, but at the same time, because heal guards exist, your opponent also gets to live longer, and this deck is not exactly the best at pushing for game. It really wants to just drag the game out, and before it was really doable because you always had access to the 4 guards in your deck, and your opponent had to hopefully draw into theirs. But now there are 4 additional guards in their deck that can block your attack, so that is the issue with that. I thought the deck's pretty good. So this Fish definitely tells Gears to eat shit because Clancy exists. They can never block the front row pretty much, and that alone I think is worth including because Gears are very popular right now, and yeah, even though I don't think it's the best deck, people will still play it. So yeah. Definitely still a pretty okay deck in the meta. I think these 2 slots are like relatively interchangeable here. So, but yeah. And finally, we are to the top 3. I think these 2 are interchangeable, but I think these 2 are in this order. So, first off is Chrono Jet. So, Chrono Jet or just Gear Chronicle in general. The deck is it feels very much like another Dragon Empire clan, to put it simply. It feels like a Kagero before the cross, where if you flip a bunch of triggers, it feels really nice. The deck feels really nice to play. Even if you don't, the deck still feels okay. Chrono Jet striding every turn and just bot decking a card lane. You do like minimum 2 damage every turn if you want to. It's pretty nice. The deck does struggle to get card advantage because again, like I said, it feels like a Dragon Empire clan. It doesn't plus that hard. You have GG and that's pretty much it. And you can't even max out on the card because your deck uses Soul for a bunch of other stuff. But the deck just plays like a really like pretty good like mid-range-ish game. But the best thing about the deck is definitely its toolbox in the G zone. You have Lost Age for like a good first strike, just when your opponent doesn't commit that much, you can just spot deck a booster and call it. You have Chronos Command where it super punishes stuff like Altma where they need to have a full board every turn to constantly push damage, because they do need boosters. So you have Chronos Command for that. You have Fate Rider, which in my opinion is the best stride in the deck by far. To help you just change your board state up to your liking. You can change grade 1s for grade 2s. You can change your starter or heals in your hand for GGs help you draw a card, or the soul charge 1. They get extra soul for later. And you have a Ragnar Clock to help you push damage and also just be guard restrict. But I think the best thing about the deck is the fact that the deck can basically play the game ignoring heal cards. So it turns off all the extra heals that the opponents have. So you play like old Vanguard where heal guards aren't a thing, because you have the mate to the Legion that says your opponent cannot guard with grade zeros. You have the random clock that says they can't guard grade zeros, and if they're at 5 and you just clear the front row off, and you have two of the mates as well as a stride and they're at 5, you are checking for 3 PGs because your stride is just hitting over a heal guard, unless they have multiples, of course. But yeah. So the strongest strength of the deck is definitely the amount of guard tricks they can have, and so the amount of guard tricks they can have, and the fact that Chrono Jack can constantly bot deck stuff every turn to help you push for damage as well. And just something that no one really says is that since it's still the early set of G, legions are still everywhere, and by bot decking the rears, they don't go to drop zone, so it's harder for them to get drop zone to Legion. That's just something that comes up sometimes. Sometimes you just short one card that you wish that they just killed instead of bot decking. So just something small to notice there. So yeah. And finally, in my opinion, the second best deck is Brawlers. Brawlers, again, they got the same buffs as Revengers, same thing, like Vanilla Strides, Heal Guards. This deck is specific also because they draw a bunch with the Helena. So you can semi cycle for extra shield in your deck, obviously, and then again, if you just can't stride or your opponent just doesn't commit a big board for you to punch into, right? You can just toss a card, you can just stride, and just get a triple drive instead. So yeah, same reasons. It's still the same old deck, but I think Brawlers are the deck that got the biggest like quote unquote buffs from the Vanilla Strides and the Heal Guards compared to other decks. So it was already good before, and the Heal Guards and the Strides definitely helped even more. So yeah. And finally, in my opinion, the sole tier 1 deck of this format is Overgrowth Across. This deck has basically everything. This deck is a very complete package. You have a huge toolbox of grade 2s you can play. Like, the deck has so many good grade 2s. Like, there are so many ways you can play the deck. You can play Striking, you can not play Striking in favor of more retires, more solo attackers, all that good stuff. You have, in my opinion, the biggest mistake of this set, the Grom, the Soul Blast 2 to countercharge 2, letting you loop the cross re-rides and re-legions super easily. Like, if you've seen any gameplay of the cross, you will notice that like what the deck does, you go like you ride the cross, you do like a Persona Blast, you push for like we'll start off with the fact that the cross itself is a +2 if you grab Dote with it, because you Legion +1 from the Dote, and then you discard the Dote, so you break even, and you draw 2, so there's your +2. So it's a +2 in card advantage as a +1 in attack, and you get 4 drive checks. And then once you do that, on your next turn, you Grom your 2 triggers out, you unflip 2, or you reroute the cross, you unflip 2, and then you just do that again. You just keep looping it, and then at some point when you can't loop anymore, or you just feel like looping will deck you out or something like that, you just go into your toolbox of strides. You go into your Mustafas for CB1 retire, and then after that you go into Root Flare for a free column retire. The deck just has a very solid game plan. The deck's only issue is getting to the cross. Sometimes you just don't draw it, and then you just cry, because it is honestly the only good ride in your deck, and you can't even play good backup ride because you're forced to play Dote in your deck as its mate. But yeah. The deck is just it's a very complete package. It just has a little bit of everything. Grom is absolutely busted in tandem with what Overgrowth Across does as a deck. You loop your legions over and over again, and more drive checks means more chances to flip your heals, and then you just legion those heals back, and then you just do it again, and if you draw them, they're heal guards now. So definitely a very, very powerful deck. I don't think it's like a tier 0 deck or anything, but I do think it is the problem child of the meta, and I do think it is, and I do think it is strong to the point where it is a full tier above everything else under it. So yeah. So that's it for this month's meta, this tier list. Tell me guys what you think about this meta of Set 1 of G down below in the comments. Like and subscribe, all the good stuff, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.